Hello everyone, my name is Ka. Welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be sharing what inspires the characters that I create. In the past few videos, you may not have seen many characters that I have created myself in terms of besides like my persona, my art persona. But in this video, I will be doing a speed paint of a character that I've been working on for the past few months. If you don't know, I've been creating artwork outside of YouTube on my TikTok as well as my Kara account. So if you would like to see some personal projects, I recommend checking me out on there. On TikTok, it's 3rikadraws, and on Kara, it is just my YouTube handle with no dots, no symbols, no nothing. So in this video, I'm going to start talking about how I personally strive to create diversity of characters. Back when I was creating characters, when I was first starting to take my art seriously, I've noticed that most of the time I would create characters who are like brown-skinned women. And I think I did that because growing up, I didn't really have a lot of art to refer to that created specifically brown-skinned women, at least not in the style that I was looking to create people in. Most of the time with brown skinned women or black women, I've seen a lot more artists do like realistic illustrations or paintings of said women with like the different textured hairstyles and diving into more like African culture. That was not what I was personally looking for at the time when I was drawing. Usually people say that you try to draw someone that you can look at and think, oh, this person also could represent myself, or I can see myself in this character. So that's how I started. But as I've been growing into my art style and getting better at drawing and creating things, I noticed how important it is to create a diverse set of characters, especially if I wanted to come off as a character designer or someone who would be interested in doing concept art for like indie studios or big companies. So how I started to try to create a diversity of characters, I try to think, what have I not created yet? And going back to like the beginning of what I said, back then I would only do brown skinned women. So to challenge that, I started trying to draw lighter skinned men. And if you personally create one specific gender and you're just used to doing that gender over and over and over again, you're going to realize how difficult it is to try to draw the other gender, with at least without practicing, looking at references, all that type of stuff. It is a challenge because it's outside of your norm, but it is important that you try to challenge what your norm is and practicing different things that you're not used to drawing, because that makes you a well-diverse artist. Especially, again, if you're trying to look into work where you want to create multiple different characters, they're going to all have to look different. I don't know if you've heard of same face syndrome, but that's basically when you create a character and you may try to like make it different, but they're always going to look the same, because maybe it's the way that you design the face, maybe it's the way that you design the body, maybe it's similar color palettes. Most people that are like in studios or indie projects are looking for people who can do a variety of different things, especially with their characters. It's one thing if you're doing twins or people who are like from alternate dimensions and universes and stuff, maybe that would work. But most of the time they're looking for people who can do all different types of body types, all different types of skin tones and facial features and genders and all that type of stuff. So I highly recommend that you challenge yourself and push yourself to create characters that you usually would not make. For example, for this one, I've been trying to practice with different characters all the time since realizing I only create a certain type of character. So in this one, if you can't tell, or I don't know like what part of the video this is showing, but I try to create stumpier or pudgier, chunkier characters, or at least this one character I'm trying to make a little chunkier because I typically create characters that are more like on the slim thick side or maybe on the slimmer side. That's just what I was used to doing, but I want to make characters that have the different body type because that's what we see in real life. Not everyone is going to be slim, thick, or slim. That's just the reality. And it's good to see a diverse type of character that maybe some people don't get to see very often. So I keep that in mind as I try to design this character. And I'm so happy to say that I feel pretty good in stepping in the right direction with this one. And her name is Ivy, if you do not know. This is my original character, Ivy. She is a plant zombie mix character that I have come up with a few months ago. And I decided to make her this little, like, chunky type character because I typically don't do that. And I wanted it to be a little bit different. You don't usually see like chunky zombies. Usually you see really the skinny, bony ones. So I wanted to do something different, and here I went. But since now I have this character, the next point I want to make is that I keep an environment in mind when I create my characters, like where they come from, what their backstory is, how do they come to be. And for this one in specific, I said that Ivy was a zombie type character, and I decided for her little scene that I'm making in this speed paint, she comes from a very corrupt, abandoned, apocalyptic type city where it's being run over or taken control of by mutant plants that she kind of feels that she belongs in. But that's just my example. For maybe your characters, I would highly recommend keeping an environment in mind because it gives depth to your characters. It's one thing if you want to make a character look pretty or handsome or slay, like, but if you're trying to give them more depth, if you want to make people more interested in your characters, I would recommend putting them in an environment where they feel they are belonging in or something that suits them. And then by then you start to give them a little bit more background, and people are going to be a little bit more curious of, oh, this person's in this type of background, like what's going on there, or like what type of person is this, or all these different questions that make your character a little bit more interesting. And I'm going to refer back to my previous point. Like, let's say you make a character who's like very sci-fi and they're very much like in cityscapes and stuff. Maybe you want to stray away from that typical type of person that you typically create. If you want to get like a new character and you want something to inspire a new character, maybe think of something you haven't done already. Maybe you can think of, oh, this person lives in like the Rocky Mountains. Maybe this person lives underwater. Maybe this person isn't really a person. Maybe it's a mix of like a humanoid, or maybe it's a like an animal character. Maybe it's a plant. Maybe, it's a rock. I don't know. Just keeping that in mind, the environment, and making a new character. And I kind of started to touch on this last point, but another thing I want to mention is asking yourself this question. Can a story be made from them? And how open concept are they for others? What I mean by that is, so you have your character, your inspired character that you want to like just give more life to. You gave them an environment. Cool. Now they have a place where they reside in, a universe that they belong in. What story could be made from them? How do they come to be? What is their story? Where are they going? What is the objective of this character? And I'm not going to lie, these are some pretty big questions, and maybe you don't want to get too in depth with that, but I'm just sharing with you what inspires my characters, because personally, I would want to have people interested in my characters and have a little story. Even if I can't write the story right now, I want there to be something going for my characters. So how I do that, at least for this example, Ivy, I try to make a story related to her by, yes, putting her in the environment that she comes from, which is the apocalyptic, abandoned city. However, I also include in the far background, like this very vibrant farm type of environment that she's looking and maybe wondering about. So there's now a narrative to where, yes, she comes from this apocalyptic city. She sees, or she's surrounded by creatures that are similar to her. However, she's longing or staring at a place that's very different from where she comes from. And for me, it's to insinuate maybe she wants to venture out and see that area, or maybe it's something that it has like her story. Maybe she doesn't want to be part of the city. Maybe she wants to be a part of something else. And I don't put any words into this illustration specifically, so that's how I try to make it open concept for others. I'm just sharing one perspective of what that could be. Maybe it's she's looking back at the farm. Maybe she comes from the farm and she went to the apocalyptic city to join who she finds to be creatures similar to her, like creatures that she can relate to, and or vice versa. Or maybe something else that I'm not saying in this video. But it all comes back to making the character interesting, what the story is, what environment that she's going to be in or they're going to be in, that type of stuff. But thinking about all these aspects inspires me to create a variety of different characters. And I feel like, yes, it's a lot of questions, it's a lot of work. Sometimes it's just like full-on brainstorming, and maybe you don't come up with something right away, and that's okay. For me, I like to at least think, okay, maybe I want to make something different. How am I going to go about it? How is this character going to look like? What's going to affect their appearance? Is it because of the environment? All these different things. But I share all this to say, if you are interested, again, in creating more depth into your characters, and you want to find more inspiration for your characters, these are the type of questions that I recommend you ask yourself. Are you happy with the characters that you have right now? Are your characters diverse? If not, how could you change them? And start with that. I know I gave a lot of questions in the beginning that could be a little overwhelming, but I would start with those first few questions to ask yourself if you're looking to push yourself when creating new characters. But I would say that would be it for this video. I'm so sorry if I went off a lot of tangents, if it was difficult to follow. I will just end the video on this note of what inspires my characters. How diverse are they? What is the environment that they reside in? And what is their story? If I had to sum it all up in 3 little sentences or 3 points, I would say that. But thank you again for watching this video or listening to me. If maybe you're not able to watch the speed paint, I appreciate you for being here.